Yo guys, welcome to this elder fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got exiled from Konoha and got Harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to Youkai no Hariken for this story. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Much of Konoha's ninja populace waited anxiously at the village gates for the Sasuke Retrieval squad to return. Most wished Sasuke's safety. Some wished for the whole team to be safe. Few wished for Naruto to return alive. Many of these thoughts varied, but for Naruto, the only thing that mattered was to keep his promise to Sakura, more so alive than dead. Then he could see the looks on every doubter's face at the fact the Bane of Konoha has defeated the genius, uchiha Sasuke. That would be nice. What many people didn't know about Naruto was that he was very intelligent. He knew that with his status, he could not afford to look as smart as he was because of the reasoning that a smart demon was a dangerous demon. And even then, that didn't always work. Humming from the ones who can't tell the difference of the container and the contained, let alone a human and a guardian. Naruto thought as he coughed up blood and continued his agonizing journey to Konoha. Yes, the infamous Bijuu were guardians, not demons. Careful kid. That gaping hole is a serious injury, so watch how you move your body. QP advised. It would be easier if I didn't have my teammate on my back. Naruto strained out in his mind. Teammate. He wanted to kill you for his own gain. You should have never moved your Rasengan from his heart. The Ninetales growled angrily. Naruto smiled a bit and calmly stated, I had a promise to keep. But I don't want you to die in the process, kid. The fox spoke softly. The kitsune's host was touched. Oh, you do care. He thought with a small smile, becoming happy that the beast was concerned for him. The guardian grinned mischievously. Of course I do. I don't want to die yet. The golden-haired boy's face contorted into a deadpan look. Should have known. He thought back dryly. Love you too, kid. Chirped QB, ending the conversation. As Naruto felt the guardian's presence fade from his mind, the village gate start to come into his line of vision. The QB Jinchuriki panted as he paused, fighting his aching body to continue moving. Come on, we were almost there. Naruto said, motivating himself. He felt his consciousness slipping as he pushed himself harder to reach the gates of Konoha. As soon as he saw Tsunade, Kakashi, and Sakura, he smiled before coughing up more blood, the pain becoming unbearable as it knocked him unconscious. Naruto! Exclaimed Tsunade, going into medic mode. She quickly looked at Sasuke and started beepizing him. Many deep cuts on his sides, chakra burns, chakra exhaustion, left hand is near fried, and a bit of head trauma. The Hokage whispered to herself. Then she looked at Naruto and examined his current state. Open wounds, burns, chakra exhaustion, chakra burns, and a hole in his right lung. Much blood is lost, and his pulse. The Hokage placed her fingers against his neck, feeling the blood pumps coming slower by a small margin. Her hazel eyes widened in shock. He's fading slowly. Kakashi. Carry Sasuke and follow me to the hospital. She ordered while gently picking up Naruto, running to the hospital at full speed. With Kakashi following suit, they both were on their way to the medical facility. Damn it. Kakashi thought heatedly to himself. Naruto, if I wouldn't have taught him the Chidori, you wouldn't be in this condition. Regret began to shine in the silver-haired Jounin's uncovered eye. My dealings with you and Sakura were wrong. I favored Sasuke because I saw myself in him. Kakashi looked at his Jinchuriki student as he was being carried by the Hokage. I swear I'll make this up to you. No matter what it takes. Meanwhile, Sakura was conflicted with worry. Sasuke-kun, she thought, running to the hospital. Her jade eyes narrowed, grimacing as she thought about her other teammate. Naruto, why did you try to kill him? She whispered bitterly to herself. You know I love him. She ran to the hospital, praying that Sasuke would be alright. As the pink-haired genin ran to the hospital, an Anbu with a Nico mask was following the Hokage and the former Anbu captain to the hospital. Don't you dare die, Naruto-kun, the masked Kunoichi thought in concern. She knew the golden-haired boy from the missions of trying to capture him whenever he did a large-scale prank, which happened quite often when he was at the academy. The woman knew that it was an act, and as time passed, she grew inquisitive of the boy, desiring to know more about him. Wanting to sedate that curiosity, she followed him one night. Flashback. After training for 5 hours straight, he tiredly went to the Hokage monument and just sat down, staring at the full moon. By this time, she was already beyond impressed from his training. He's more skilled than what he shows. The Anbu thought, silently landing a few feet away from the golden-haired child. As she moved to get closer, Naruto asked softly, is there something you want? He turned his head at her with melancholy eyes. I was just curious about you. She said simply. Naruto looked at the masked Kunoichi briefly, unsure if her reason was a genuine. Brushing her off, he chuckled and said, why? I'm the demon brat that everyone seems so fond of thinking. The purple-haired woman looked at the QB container calmly, understanding that he did not believe her. Some of your actions just seem to be forced. The Nico woman replied in a gentle tone, catching the blonde's attention. Silence reigned for a moment. So you wanted to get to know me for yourself? The Jinchuriki asked with surprise and well-hidden hope. The prospect of this woman that could be a potential friend had given the blonde boy a bit of spirit, longing to have another person he could talk to, maybe even cherish. The Kunoichi giggled quietly to herself. Yeah. Why not? If we have questions, just go to the source. Naruto's eyes lit up a bit. Well then, fire away Nico-chan. The Anbu moved and took a seat next to him, taking in the lunar shine of the illuminating planet above them. Why do you do the things that you do? The Ninetales host closed his eyes, not wanting to show the emotions that swirled in them. He gave her a fox-like grin. Because I'm awesome like that. The Anbu shook her head, stopping the orange-clad male. That's what I'm talking about. You smile and move like everything is alright, but it isn't. Naruto became calmer, more distant, making the elite Kunoichi give him all of her attention. I hear the whispers. The child started. I know the village treats me differently from everyone else. I tried to figure it out. His blue eyes gazed upon the night sky. Some nights I can't sleep. The question forever running in my mind, is there something wrong with me? Do they know something about myself that I'm unaware of? Anger flashed across his face. If so, why won't they tell me instead of criticizing me and calling me all these absurd names? At least have the nerve to say it to my face. The CAD operative looked at the whiskered cheek boy, sympathetic that he had been pushed that far. The fox's jailer continued, it began to eat at me. But one day, I just decided to let it go. The woman stared at him, beckoning the child to explain. I quit trying to understand them because they won't take the time to understand me. So I decided to smile, trying to find the positive side of things. I smile to show that I'm stronger than their words. That I'm unfazed by their hate. That I'm not alone like they think I am. A smile of resignation formed on the Jinchuriki's face. The purple-haired Anbu allowed a softer expression on her masked visage. Don't you have a friend that you can go to? Naruto sighed and began swinging his legs from the ledge. I do, but he has to tend to everyone and I don't want to be a bother. The Kunoichi looked back at the lunar planet above them before she asked, who is he? The blonde child gave a serene smile. Here is Injiji, the Hokage. The female ninja couldn't help herself as she giggled from the name. Doesn't he get mad when you call him that? She asked. The blue-eyed boy turned his gaze to her, grinning foxily. Sometimes, but that's okay. The golden-haired boy moved on to the next question, calmly looking at the woman's mask. So, any more questions? The shinobi held her gaze with the child. Are you always this trusting? The masked woman heard a small laugh escape the Jinchuriki's lips. No. You're just different. He answered with an amused expression. A small smile graced her hidden features as she tilted her head towards him. How so? The female Anbu asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Well, when you chase after me after I do a prank, you try, but you show no hostility. In fact, I think you enjoy it sometimes. He answered. The purple-haired woman thanked Kami for a mask to hide her shocked face. So what's your name? Naruto asked, looking back at the moon. The woman quietly laughed, bemused of the boy beside her. I cannot tell you that. Not while I'm in uniform, anyway. She replied. He smiled and said, figures. His azure eyes gleamed in curiosity. Can I see what you look like then? I'm sure you're really pretty, he said as he leaned closer to her. The question and compliment caught her off guard, a light blush painting her cheeks, not that he could see it anyway. She grinned to herself as she replied teasingly, you're cute, but not that cute. Naruto's cheeks gave a rosy hue from the compliment before giving her a brilliant grin. Cute enough to get your attention, right? A melodious laugh emitted from the violet-haired woman. The QB Jinchuriki's flirting was refreshing to her, finding it a pleasure that someone had a silver tongue with their word. Naruto's face flushed, finding the Anbu Kunoichi's laughter enjoyable and pleasurable to his ears. Finally finished, she replied, I suppose you're right, Naruto. She giggled a little more before she continued. I'll show you my face once and I'll tell you my name, but must not tell anyone. Understand? Naruto grinned as he gave a thumbs up. You have my word. He said enthusiastically. Smiling, she nodded and pulled off her mask, thus showing her face. Dark perceptive eyes illuminated under the moon with her small nose and soft, supple lips. Her soft skin tone was enhanced by the lunar planet's shine, making her look angelic yet deadly. Naruto was mesmerized and made sure to engrave her face in his head. Beautiful, he whispered in admiration. She gave the village pariah a beautiful smile and slowly moved her lips by his ear. My name is Yuzuki Yugao, Naruto-kun. Remember it? She whispered. Naruto graced her a genuine smile and replied, believe I will, Moonflower-chan. She smiled softly and stood back up to put her mask back on, turning away to adjust the identity-protecting object. When she turned to wave her goodbye, he was already gone. Definitely more skilled than what he shows. She said quietly to herself. Youkai stayed for a few moments longer before she made a decision within herself. You won't alone anymore, Naruto. The elite shinobi looked at the sky before she too disappeared into the night. Flashback end. Ever since that night, they began to grow close to each other. Naruto-kun Youkai thought in worry as she continued to run towards the hospital with Tsunade and Kakashi. Time skip 2 weeks later. Naruto had all of his valuables as he walked in the dead of night. So you're leaving without saying your farewells to your friends? Asked QB. Yeah, I don't want my friends to feel bad for me. And I can't bear with the fact that the council finally got their wish. The container thought bitterly. After finally healing up, they gave me 3 days to say goodbye, but with the way it has been lately, I rather not. Said Naruto as he thought on how Sakura just ignored him ever since he came back from that mission. Besides, he started, his eyes glazed in melancholy as he smiled in resignation. No one would miss me. At this, QB went silent in remorse, ending the discussion. The wind blew lightly as Naruto let a sorrow-filled teardrop. He began walking into the darkness, not to be seen or heard from in the years to come. Those fools. Tsunade exclaimed angrily, tears falling on her desk. Why banish him? All of them did their job and completed their mission. We shouldn't have even done that. He left on his own validation, that's treason. And he only gets a year of probation and cannot pass down in rank. The Hokage glared in remembrance of the council meeting, loathing the final decision. She couldn't stand being in her office, leaving via window as she jumped to the rooftop of the Hokage tower. She flipped as she landed to her destination, feeling melancholy slowly set in as she leaned on the railing on the outside of the area. Her hazel eyes looked over Konoha, its nightlife lighting up a little more than usual tonight. Her hand tightened as the wind blew, her emotions rising as she thought about the blonde-haired Jinchuriki. Naruto the golden-haired ninja had given her something that she believed lost. He ignited her faith again and helped her when she was at her lowest. Had she been around his age, she wouldn't have pushed it past her that she would have pursued him. Tsunade allowed her thoughts to wander to when she and the medics operated on him when he had gotten back on that mission. That was the first time I've ever seen him at peace. She thought quietly to herself. Flashback. Green chakra coursed through Tsunade's hands as she healed Naruto, repairing the hole in his chest. The patient in question groaned lowly as his eyes opened, his expression quiet as it was calm. The doctors and nurses, along with Tsunade and Shizune, froze and watched him. The boy looked around at the staff, Shizune, and her and muttered, "Damn, I must be a sight, huh?" The room was silent, speechless. He was on tranquilizers that should have kept him unconscious for the rest of the day, and yet, here he was awake, with a joke no less. The QB container smiled as he mumbled, "Thanks." Shizune, worried for the boy's health, asked what was on the Mednin's minds. For what? When they looked back at him, he was asleep again. Tsunade had her head bowed, hiding the tears that slowly slid down her cheeks. Flashback end. The buxom woman narrowed her eyes as they took a sad tinge to them. He was happy that someone cared. She thought bitterly. What makes him think that we don't care? The slug princess wondered aloud. Determined began to shine in her eyes, ready to show Naruto what he thought he didn't have. Shizune appeared on the rooftop as she walked slowly through the door, tears in her eyes. The blonde woman turned to see her apprentice, becoming concerned. "He's gone, Tsunade-sama." She whispered. Naruto-kun left the village. Tsunade slowly looked at Shizune with wide eyes. What? Disbelief was written all over the slug user's countenance. The raven-haired woman looked down as she continued. He didn't even say goodbye. Shizune's hand tightened in anger as she looked directly into her master's eyes. And the village is celebrating. Shizune cried out, her distraught emotions coming to the forefront. Tsunade walked to her apprentice and held the medic ninja, consoling her. Tsunade felt Shizune release her tears as her own fell, her anger rising. "We need to get to my office. We're going to settle this," the blonde said, her pupil nodding as she held herself together to follow the angered Kage. As they went inside the office, they were greeted to the side of the Rookie 9 guys team with their instructors, the Sand siblings, Anko, Akibi, Haruka, and Anbu operative Nico sitting, waiting patiently for them. Gaara, lacking patience, bluntly asked a question that weighed on everyone's mind. "Where's Uzumaki? We haven't seen him in the past week." Shizune just looked at the floor, and Tsunade just looked at them with a pained expression. "He was exiled," the fire shadow replied. Everyone stiffened in shock, disbelief collectively on their visage. No words needed to be spoken now. The silence was enough. Naruto was halfway to Nami no Kuni after running for most of the night, tired from the silent run. He decided to stop at an old shrine and camp there for the night. Maybe he was crazy, but there was something about the place that drew him there. Just as he turned to look on elsewhere, he saw a moonlit clearing. Curiosity piquing, he went to the clearing. There, he discovered a sculpture of a heavenly wolf, howling to the sky. At the base of the statue it had a stone plaque that had a few words. "Thank you Mother Amaterasu. Let this be a reminder to everyone that you protected the villages, no matter how challenging your endeavors were." At this, Naruto started to think. Apparently, this wolf protected everyone it cared about. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki applied his situation to the message. Are they really worth it? Naruto asked himself as he thought about his precious people. Tsunade, Shizune, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Shino, Kiba, Hinata, Kurenai-sensei, Asuma-sensei, Am, Tuchi-Aji-san, Yuga-chan, and even Kyuubi. Could I live without them in my life? He felt a strong bond for everyone, believing his question to be rather unintelligent. He knew the answer to it already. I couldn't bear it. I would die for all of them. Determination shone in his eyes as his mind was made up. Exiled or not, I will train for them. Naruto laid on the side of the statue, eyes growing heavy from the traveling that he did. They are the only thing I have to live for. With that last thought, he drifted to sleep. The statue illuminated mysteriously, the wolf's eyes shining as a howl was heard throughout the forest. Mindscape. Naruto found himself in the seal. Damn, this blows. I have to change this place. This has to be unbearable to live in. Naruto said, shaking his head. He heard a chuckle that rumbled throughout the place, turning to see the Ninetales watching him with a bemused expression. I would appreciate the change, if you don't mind. Naruto blinked before he turned away from it, closing his eyes in contemplation. The monumental kitsune became curious, watching its jailer as it felt the place slowly begin to shake. The seal lit up brightly, causing the fox to use its tails to protect its eyes. More of the place rumbled as it began to shift and take on a new form. When the seal dimmed down and the establishment settled, the guardian moved its appendages, becoming amazed. Now the place was a steep grassy hill with temple-like ruins at the top of the hill. At the center of the temple ruins was a hole as big as Kyuubi, filled with soft grass for the nine-tailed fox to sleep in comfortably. A lake was to the left of Naruto, clear and lightly rippling from the cool breeze. Finally the sky is filled with stars with the moon, bright and full. Kyuubi looked at its jailer in shock. Why? I made your life a living hell. Why would you do this? Naruto looked at the questioning fox and replied, why not? The villagers made my life a living hell. Not you. Besides, you save me on a daily basis. And I'm sure you are lonely in here by yourself. Naruto said with a downcast look. I don't want you to hide and isolate yourself anymore. I figured since we're stuck together, we might as well get to know each other. Right. Kyuubi looked at Naruto with skepticism and hidden emotions in its eyes. So you don't care if I'm a huge talking fox? Naruto's sweat dropped. The stories of your height really don't do you justice. The Ninetales gave a small sweat drop. As for the talking fox thing, I think it's amazing as hell. How many people can't say that they have an awesome fox like you? Naruto said excitedly. The kitsune looked into its host's eyes and found acknowledgement in their depths. Quietly, the Kyuubi walked towards Naruto and began to shrink and change, red mist surrounding it. When the smoke cleared, Naruto stood rooted in his place. Kyuubi became a voluptuous woman with two small fox ears on the top of her blood-red hair. The tails were gone and around her neck was a necklace, the new form of her seal. She wore a black and red kimono trimmed with white on the outside. The most beautiful feature to Naruto was her red eyes. They had a low ethereal glow to them. Naruto was snapped from his thoughts when she moved into his personal space, embracing him. The whisker-cheeked shinobi began to feel silent tears fell on his shoulder, looking at the guardian he contained. His instincts began to guide him as he slowly wrapped his arms around her figure, rubbing her back as he tried to placate her. Thank you, Naruto-kun. His eyes softened in understanding. She was happy that she was accepted. Hey Kyuubi. The guardian felt herself smile, hearing the soft tone in her host's voice. She answered lowly, feeling herself being turned around. Her sight witnessed the beginning of dawn, its orange glow beginning to paint the sky with warm colors. The blood-haired woman smiled gracefully, actually able to feel the heat against her skin. Naruto glanced at the fox guardian and couldn't help but think, she's beautiful. Naruto was glad that he decided to help her. He noticed that he was slowly fading, staring back at Kyuubi. I hope you'll enjoy the place. I know it isn't the real thing, but I did what I could. She saw him becoming transparent, sighing. I thank you. The guardian said quietly, allowing a smile to grace her features. Come back here tomorrow. I'll explain what I'll be training you in. You're gonna train me? Naruto asked in shock. Kyuubi smiled beautifully. Of course. I cannot have a weak host, can I? He chuckled as he grinned foxily, fading completely from her sight. Naruto groaned lowly as he moved back into reality, opening his sapphire-colored yes to see a white wolf with red markings and a flaming shield on its back, staring at him as its tails tentatively moved from side to side. He thought, I know I've seen this wolf before. Naruto felt dread way over his being as he remembered the statue he saw. Oh hell no. Are you Amaterasu? The fox container asked hesitantly. A feminine voice was heard from the white wolf as it nodded. Hi, I am. How did you know? There are many situations that Naruto had encountered in his life. Being in a life or death situation. On a daily basis. Embarrassing himself. Plenty. But awaking to see a white wolf with heavenly status staring at him. No. You were a statue. Naruto yelled in surprise while pointing at Amaterasu. The wolf tilted her head to the right, showing her confusion. You mean that one over there? Amaterasu pointed with her ink-tipped tail. Naruto looked behind and sweat dropped. Yeah, that one. He mumbled. So what is your name? Amaterasu inquired. You know mine, but I don't know yours. She said with her tail wagging a bit. It's Uzumaki Naruto, Amaterasu-sama. He said. The wolf's tail suddenly stopped moving. Naruto looked at her confused. Ami? Just Ami. I don't too much appreciate the honorifics. She said. Naruto then walked up to her, bending down to her eye level. Amaterasu blushed lightly from the closeness. He rubbed her neck affectionately and said, no. Her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in anger. When she was about to question him he grinned. I'll call you Rasu-chan. This perplexed the sun goddess. This is the first time someone ever gave her a name outside her usual names. And the way he said it. It was so endearing. Rasu-chan? She asked slowly, feeling the warmth inside her beginning to swell. Yeah. I like it. It just rolls off the tongue. And it sounds cute. But if you don't like it. I do. The holy wolf interrupted. It's different, that all. She spoke with her tail beginning to sway side to side contently. Oh. Naruto answered. There was an awkward silence before Naruto got up, sighing as looked off to the distance, thinking about his former village. The wolf looked at the emotions that his eyes held, wondering what the orange-clad ninja was thinking. The blonde gave a small bow to her. Well, I'm sure you have better things to do than to talk to me, Sojana. He spoke respectively before turning away from the holy canine, continuing his journey. The white wolf looked at the departing child. She couldn't explain it, but she felt compelled to stay with the golden-haired child, if only for a little while longer. Wait. Are you going back home? Amaterasu asked. Naruto stopped in his steps. I don't have a home. He whispered as he looked into the distance. Not anymore. Amaterasu, sensing that he was emotionally distraught, walked up to Naruto and rubbed her head into his hand to comfort him. He looked down at her and smiled. It'll be okay. I'll still protect them. His eyes lightly narrowed. Even if they don't want me to. Amaterasu listened to him and thought, what happened to him? As she started to think to herself, his scent began to grab her attention. Naruto, if you don't mind me asking, why do you have a scent of a fox? The young shinobi hesitated but answered honestly. I have a guardian sealed inside of me. The sun goddess tilted her head as she sat on her haunches. May I see for myself? Amaterasu asked, wanting to see what this guardian was. It was familiar to her. Shocked, the blonde replied, how can I show you? I can't bring her out without killing myself. And I don't want to make myself a beacon for Konoha to find either. He added silently in his thoughts. The holy wolf answered, just relax and meditate. When you clear your mind, I'll be able to transport myself inside you. Silence reigned for a moment before the golden-haired child said, alright. He sat beside her and began to relax himself. When he cleared his mind, Amaterasu walked over to him and placed a paw on his head, disappearing in a flash of light as she entered the seal. Seal. Naruto opened his eyes to his mindscape that he changed last night. I could definitely get used to this. He said, enjoying the sun rising to the morning sky. He wouldn't deny that feeling of accomplishment was all over him, proud of his work. The blonde-haired ninja began to walk to the temple ruins to look for Amaterasu. Naruto then looked by the lake and seen someone. Is that her? He thought. Changing direction, he started walking to the figure. He finally reached his destination, cautious as he was unsure of the person before him. Rasu-chan? He asked slowly. Amaterasu turned around and looked him, smiling softly. Naruto was staring at her, his whiskered cheeks taking a rosy hue. She was a gorgeous woman with a figure worthy of her status. Her battle-white kimono had red designs along with a matching crimson sash, accentuated her curves nicely. She had tanned, smooth skin with wavy white hair that slightly curved at the ends. At the top of her head were two wolf ears, twitching at the sounds they would pick up. Her eyes were orange, which was his favorite color. All in all, she rivaled Kyuubi in terms of beauty. Hello, Naruto-kun. The sun goddess turned her attention back to the fireball that gave light to the earth. You know, your mindscape is certainly a sight to behold. It's beautiful. Amaterasu said as she smiled contently, entranced by the state of the sky. He moved to stand by her, smiling as he replied, thanks. I saw this on top on the Hokage monument. I liked it and started going there ever since. Well, at least until Naruto stopped that train of thought before he smiled. Never mind that, let's go. He said as he got up and started walking away. Amaterasu stood as she saw the pain in his eyes and became concerned. Something's wrong, she thought, quietly following the golden-haired child. You smile, but it does not reach your eyes. Did something happen to you? They finally made it to the temple ruins. Naruto walked towards the center and said, Kyuubi. Are you asleep? A few moments later, the fox woman walked out of the center in her human form. She offered a vulpine smile. Naruto. I said tomorrow night. You just wanted to see me, nah? She asked, her eyes taking a mischievous gleam. Naruto reddened in the face, but stomped it down. He couldn't let Kyuubi get the best of him. You have a visitor. The Ninetales was confused until she looked past him. Ami? She asked in surprise. Amaterasu looked away from the sunrise and looked back at her. Kyuubi? The holy woman questioned, shocked to see the vixen. They both ran to each other and embraced one another, happy to see the other. When they pulled away, the orange-eyed woman asked, how are you? I haven't seen you since you replaced the original Ninetales several hundred years ago. The red-haired woman replied, I was doing alright until someone with strange red showed up and tried to control me. The blood-haired woman looked distant for a brief moment. I don't remember much except going berserk, and before I know it, I was sealed within Naruto. She finished. Naruto, looking at the two women, said, excuse me. Not to be rude, Rasu-chan, but why have you come here? I doubt you just came here on a whim. The white-haired woman nodded and replied solemnly, I came to stop the people who are capturing the guardians. It is causing the nations to go into darkness. Naruto looked surprised and Kyuubi looked at the ground in anger. The guardians were supposed to prevent that from happening, but with the humans containing them, the nations are becoming darker and the lands will become cursed before too long. Naruto looked at the both of them. Amaterasu had a distant gaze as she looked away, and Kyuubi began to grit her teeth, resentful for the failure of her duty. The golden-haired Jinchuriki walked up to the both of them and gave a thumbs up, a confident grin on his features. That won't happen. He said, conviction in his eyes. At this, the two women looked at him in disbelief. What? Do you think it's that easy? Kyuubi replied, rather curious of her host's confidence. No. Naruto replied as his gaze became serious. Everything that is worthwhile is never easily attained. Besides, you're here. The blue-eyed child said, looking at the sun goddess. We'll make it. Kyuubi and I will help you. If I die in the process, then at least I know that it was for a worthy cause. Both women looked at him, shocked. How is that any good? How can you brush this off so haphazardly? Doesn't your life mean anything to you? The Ninetales asked, becoming irritated at her host. The blonde gazed at her, stopping anything else she was going to say. It does, but what good is life if I can't even cherish it with anyone? He looked down. I want to free you. I understand that if I die you will too, so before that happens, you will be out of here. The crimson-haired vixen stared at her jailer, astonished that he was willing to go that far. What about you? Don't you have something to live for? Amaterasu asked, concern expressed through her eyes. The whiskered-cheeked shinobi gave a serene expression. I have my precious people. Kyuubi and Amaterasu smiled gingerly. The Akami eyes softened towards the young Jinchuriki. Such a pure-hearted child. The kitsune smiled tenderly at her host, rather proud of her jailer. Well, I really have to get moving. I can't afford stay in one place for too long yet. Naruto looked at the sun goddess. I'm not sure where you were going, but if you want, you can come with us. The Jinchuriki grinned. It'll keep Kaiu-chan from getting bored in here. He finished, honestly thinking of Kyuubi's well-being. Kyuubi, touched at his concern, and Amaterasu, delighted of his invitation to stay with them, smiled brilliantly to him. He grinned back at them in return, glad to see the two happy. I guess I'll see you tonight. He said as he began to walk away. Kyuubi looked at Amaterasu with a mischievous grin, silently telling her to follow her lead. The sun goddess smiled wolfishly. Naruto-kun Kyuubi-kun. Naruto's pranking senses were screaming to him. Yeah? He said nervously. You forgot something, Kyuubi said, slowly walking to her host with eyes of a predator. Did I? Naruto asked, unnerved by the Koi Kitsune's expression. The sun goddess appeared behind the human sacrifice before sliding her arms around the blonde shinobi and held him close, making his cheeks take a rosy hue from feeling the matured body of the celestial woman. The Ninetales appeared in front of him with hand caressing his whiskered cheek, his visage becoming something akin to bliss from the pleasurable sensation on his whisker marks. Both women smiled softly as they thought it was adorable. Kyuubi finally stopped and dragged her hand to the base of his neck. The blonde felt his heartbeat slow down when the ministration stopped on his whisker marks before he felt two soft pairs of lips upon each of his cheeks. He blushed heavily, not knowing what to say. both higher beings to face him, smiling brilliantly. Naruto turned away, not knowing what to say as he just grinned. He wasn't used to that kind of attention. Make sure you are ready for tonight. I won't hold back on you, Naruto. Kyuubi said. The blonde nodded in understanding. I know. I'm representing you, right? The vixen grinned, much like her jailer. As long as you know. The holy woman smiled in kind, finding the ordeal interesting as well as entertaining. She closed her eyes as she reached a decision. I will be accompanying you for a while, I'm going to teach you as well. Think of it as repayment for allowing me to travel with you. Kyuubi and I will discuss what we will be training you in while you're out of the seal. Amaterasu added. Naruto looked at them, a grin on his visage. You know, you two are alright. Thanks. With that said, he faded out of the seal, missing the smiles on Kyuubi and Amaterasu's features. Real world. Naruto, being brought out of his meditative state, stretched before remembering something. He pulled out a scroll and summoned new clothes. Thanks sensei. The golden-haired boy said and quickly changed out of his orange jumpsuit, burning it afterwards. He now wore the standard Anbu uniform without the armor. He has a sleeveless crimson cloak over it and decided to put a black sash over that to hold the cloak in place and to finalize his attire. Grabbing another scroll, he unsealed it and a black mask appeared. Ryuga-chan, he thought fondly. It was a gift for his 11th birthday. He donned on the mask before leaping into the trees until he ran on top of the trees. I will protect all of you, he thought. He glared at the sky in his resolution deep within his soul. Believe it. Asuma-sensei. Shikamaru yelled. Asuma, Shikamaru, Izumo, and Katetsu were fighting Kakuzu and Hiden. Well, more like Kakuzu witnessing Hiden pastoring the greatness of his religion to the Konoha shinobi. Now to kill him and praise Jashin. Hiden exclaimed excitedly, ready to make his god proud as he licked the blood off of his weapon. The immortal lifted the spike and was about to shove it to his heart when suddenly he found that he couldn't move. Shikamaru successfully caught the crazed man with his Kage no Jutsu. I just need to move him out of that circle, whispered the shadow user. After struggling a bit, Shikamaru moved Hiden out of the circle and shouted, now. Asuma then sprang into action and threw a kunai, nicking his ear. Hiden moved to try and get back in the circle, but found the bearded man running to him, trench knives in hand. In Hiden's surprise, Asuma rushed in and beheaded the man. Hiden's body fell to the ground along with his head. The Konoha ninjas turned to face Kakuzu when abruptly, the beheaded man's body moved swiftly, pulling the chain of the scythe toward Asuma. The Jounin ducked but realized that it was going back to Hiden. And Hiden's body was back in the circle. Time seemed to slow down before the Konoha shinobi. Asuma-sensei. Shikamaru thought in terror, about to witness his teacher's death. As quickly time seemingly slowed down, time resumed the fast pace. Just before the triple-bladed weapon could pierce the body, a gloved hand caught the staff part of the side. Startled, everyone looked to see the new arrival. A man of 5'11" that was wearing a crimson cloak and a black sash stood silently holding the scythe. Under the cloak was a white muscle shirt and black baggy cargo pants, which was tucked inside his Anbu-styled boots at the beginning of his shins. The black mask and likeness of a wolf, 3 white whisker-like lines on each cheek, was over the mysterious shinobi's face. Beyond that, the man's golden hair defied gravity and went in every direction. Finally, on his back was a Itachi with a small chain at the end of its handle that was almost as tall as him. At the end of the chain was a small orange circle with spikes going all around it, resembling the sun. Hiden's body promptly took the scythe and moved back to Kakuzu, who held his head in his hands. Kakuzu hurriedly sewed Hiden's head back onto his body, his focus on the shinobi that interrupted the battle. I thought you were dead. The bounty hunter said in surprise, finding the situation going downhill. Hiden, angered that he was stopped from ending the chain smoker's life, growled as he shouted, let me fix that problem. The immortal flung himself at the cloak ninja, his weapon poised for the killing. The man pulled the blade from his back and swung it vertically, destroying everything within its path. Hiden slid to the side only to see the swordsman coming at him at high-rated speeds. Hiden quickly raised his scythe and blocked the strike, feeling himself strained from the power behind the attack. Kakuzu, looking at the situation, decided to enter the battle. With this man still living, we need every advantage we can get. Kakuzu said fiercely. Taking his cloak off, he unleashed the masks on his back into 4 separate entities and charged into the fight. Hiden saw his partner interfering with a wind mask blasting air pressure at his blonde opponent. Stay the hell out of this, Kakuzu. I want him. He interrupted the sacred ceremony. Kakuzu ignored him and methodically attacked with his masks. The swordsman blocked and dodged all of their attacks and finally decided to go on the offensive. The shinobi swiftly threw his blade up in the air and rapidly gathered razor winds with both hands which spun chaotically, crouching to his left side. Fueton. Kamikaze no jutsu. He called out as he lashed his left hand forward, Hiden avoiding the attack as it destroyed the earth and water entities' respective masks. Bikuzu seethed, ordering the wind and fire masks to use a joint attack, which caused a huge Gakakyu no Jutsu. The swordsman sliced through his fireball with some difficulty only to see all 4 enemies coming at him from different angles. Hiden with an insane smile on his face as he jumped from above. Die. All 4 individuals launched an attack, causing an explosion. With debris flying everywhere, the Konoha ninjas covered their faces. When the smoke cleared, everyone was shocked. All of the attacks did connect, but on one fire puppet of Kakuzu. It cracked before fully breaking apart, its remains on the ground. Bikuzu shook as his rage began to boil. Hiden looked with anime eyes. What the hell? How? He was as good as dead, there's no way he could have dodged that. The immortal yelled in disbelief. The sound of metal clashed through the air, and everyone turned to see the sight of a sword impaling the mask of the last elemental masked beings. The golden-haired man was taking every opening he saw, trying to defeat his enemies as quick as possible. The zombie brothers attacked in unison with white-hot fury in their eyes. When Hiden looked to his left, he saw that he still had the blood symbol on the ground. All I need is his blood. And then I can finish the ritual and make Jashin happy. The Jashiness said to the bounty hunter. At this point, Kakuzu didn't need to be told twice. They needed his guy dead. Hell, I might even start praising Jashin if we can get out of this. Kakuzu thought to himself before he rushed to the swordsman started with Taijutsu. The mysterious shinobi blocked a fist for his chest before lashing out his foot to stop his opponent's foot. The money-loving Akatsuki shinobi slid the targeted appendage to the left before he gave a roundhouse kick in retaliation. His enemy ducked before performing a sweep kick. Kakuzu was still in the air, so the cloaked shinobi continued his spin, getting on his hands as he attacked with his legs. The former grass nin gave a direct punch to the offending limb, using his other arm to rock it to the spinning blonde. The attack connected, but the ninja disappeared in a plume of smoke. Bikuzu was stabbed through his chest by the mysterious ninja before a log replaced the bounty hunter. The masked ninja felt hands clutch his ankles. Doten. Shinju Uzanshu no Jutsu. The threaded man called out as he began to pull his enemy into the ground below. Hiden, seeing his chance, ran to the swordsman and swung his triple-bladed staff at him. The masked shinobi swiftly escaped the headhunter technique and defended with a dachi in hand as the two-weapon clanged. The masked ninja gave a palm thrust to the immortal's side, seeing him bleed from that point. In turn, Hiden pulled out the spike he used earlier and swung, prompting the golden-haired shinobi to grab the oncoming spike. Blood began to smear it, making the scythe user smirk. Hiden hastily licked the man's blood, leaped back to the blood icon. The leaf shinobi grimaced. This stranger was winning until now. Amasuma whispered, trying to get up and help the blonde-haired shinobi. Sensei, hold on. We shouldn't go. We would only get in the way. The genius said cautiously. Something tells me that this is a setup, the Nara thought to himself. Izumo and Kitetsu wanted to object but only found truth in Shikamaru's words. They would wait. Now you're finished. Hiden spoke in hubris before he changed into his ritual form, stabbing himself to where his heart was. Silence reigned for a minute before Hiden screamed, blood seeping out of his mouth. What's happening? Hiden asked as he felt horrible pain. The swordsman pointed at the side wound of the immortal, some of the blood still there. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. My own blood. Hiden looked at the swordsman in rage before going unconscious. Bikuzu was becoming frightened. I have to escape. With self-preservation kicking in, he turned to run into the forest. To his horror, his opponent was already starting to deliver a series of sword attacks that put them up in the air. With one final upward slash, he swiftly put the sword on his back, twisted, and gave a thrust with a ball of wind, fire, and lightning into Kakuzu's stomach, yelling, Goraikou. An explosion appeared in the air, the sky becoming orange. The attack finally dissipated, making the leaf nin's gaze at the mysterious shinobi with trepidation. I pray he's our side. Kitetsu whispered, fatigue still on him. Yeah. Izumo agreed. With the way we are now, we wouldn't stand a chance against that. Shikamaru stared at the cloaked shinobi in shock. He just killed 2 of the Akatsuki like it was nothing. Asuma never took his eye off of the masked man. His eyes narrowed as he began to stand with a grunt. Whoever that shinobi is, he's powerful. Maybe we can recruit him. The former guardian suggested to his student as he gave a hand to his student. The shadow user nodded in agreement, accepting the help to get on his feet. It would be too troublesome to have him as an opponent at this point. Excuse me. The trench knife user started. Thanks for saving our asses. I was sure that I was as good as dead. Picking up Hiden's side, the cloaked man replied in a deep baritone voice, no problem. I had a score to settle with them anyway. Now, how are your injuries? Asuma winced as he held his side. We will be fine. Are you going to collect the bounty on them? The masked figure nodded. A smile graced the Saratobi's visage as he offered, "Why don't you come with us? I'm sure Hokage-sama would accommodate you with that." The blonde man knew that the bearded man was trying to appeal to him. He could get hired to do some mercenary work for Konoha, more than likely related to Akatsuki missions. The swordsman seemed to think for a minute before he answered, "All right. I got nothing to lose." The swordsman walked to Hiden and swiftly cut him to pieces, pulling out a special scroll as the immortal's body was sealed into it. He tossed the scroll to Shikamaru, who caught it. "He's immortal. That scroll is modified to hold Hiden and keep him unconscious," the golden-haired man informed. Everyone nodded. The shinobi then walked to Hiden's side and sealed it within a normal scroll. He pulled out another scroll, beheading Kakuzu before he sealed it. With everything set, the swordsman walked over to them and said, "Ready when you are." Shikamaru had been staring at the masked blonde for a minute. Why does he look familiar? The Nara began to recall the bingo book before the realization dawned on him. Wait, the white ghost. Everyone turned to the genius. There was a man who devastated the Sound Village who fit his description. Shirayure. Shikamaru finished in caution. Everyone gazed at the masked ninja in apprehension. "I won't deny that," the swordsman said calmly. "Orochimaru wanted me to be a shinobi for his village, saying that my skills were useful. I refused him, and whatever is in the bingo book is the aftermath." Everyone nodded, a mixture of shock and unease weighing on them for a moment. As they walked back to Konoha, Kitetsu said, "How did you know to have Hiden take his own blood?" The ghost shinobi looked up for a moment. "It took blood to activate his voodoo technique. I wondered if his own blood was an exception." He looked forward once more as he lightly laughed. "Personally, I think it was a fluke." Asuma chuckled. Izumo posed another question. "How did you get his blood in the first place?" The ninja swordsman replied, "When he attacked after Kakuzu put me underground. He was bleeding on his side from the wind jutsu I used. I attacked his there and used the same hand to block his spike. He took the bait when he saw the blood." Shikamaru watched the masked man in silence. The shadow user didn't know what to think of him. He sighed to himself, letting his thoughts go. They were too troublesome to deal with now. They finally reached Konoha's gates, taking about a half an hour to make it to their destination. Two Chunin guards stopped them and said, "Who is the masked shinobi?" Asuma took the lead as he replied, "He is here to meet Tsunade-sama and collect the bounty for 2 S-ranked criminals." The guard's eyes widened and nodded. "All right. 2 of our Anbu will escort you. Standard procedure." The ghost shinobi nodded. "That fine." The guard nodded as the other guards signaled the 2 Anbu operatives. One had a Tora mask and brown hair, and the other had a Nico mask and purple hair. The phantom ninja smiled tenderly for a moment before it slowly fell off of his. Was glad to see her, but he was still banished. Returning to Konoha like this could get him killed. Still, he needed to see the Hokage to give her this information. "Hello." The Tora Anbu politely greeted. "We will escort you back to Hokage-sama so that you may discuss whatever business you have with her." "Thanks." The swordsman said quietly, becoming nervous as he saw the populace around him. "Can we travel on the roofs? I rather not deal with the villagers." "No offense." The Anbu nodded, understanding him. The Nico operative finally spoke, "All right. Let's get going." The 2 Anbu, Shira, and the rest of the group jumped on the rooftops to get to their destination. The Nico Anbu looked at the Yurei as they jumped from roof to roof. The woman could not put her finger on it, but she felt close to the masked swordsman. "He's familiar to me. Almost as if I've met this person before. And that mask," the Kunoichi thought in a quieter tone. The ghost shinobi, feeling someone stare at him, looked to his left and saw the violet-haired woman looking his way. "Youkai, you were always curious," he thought to himself. "Did you want something, Nico-chan?" the golden-haired man asked her. Slightly startled, the purple-haired woman paused in her thoughts as she looked down. "Do you know someone by the name of Naruto?" Everyone now was interested in the conversation. "Actually, that is one of the reasons why I want to meet Hokage-sama." Everyone snapped their heads to him. "Is he alright? Is he alive?" Shikamaru asked, the question plaguing his mind for years. "Yeah. I asked him if he wanted to come. He wanted to, but he said he couldn't. He was banished for some reason, but he wouldn't say why." The swordsman replied in a reserved manner. "He brought back Uchiha Sasuke in critical condition. The council didn't like it and the rest is history," Tora said with bitterness. Kitetsu snorted in irritation as he added, "The villagers had the nerve to celebrate afterwards." Needless to say, a lot of people had an appointment with the Kibi. All of them, including Shira, shivered at that thought. That was his fate, far worse than death. After reaching the tower, everyone started to go their separate ways. Asuma and his group had to write their reports down, as well as take the Saratobi to the hospital, so they said their goodbyes and left. Tora had to get ready for his next mission and departed in a plume of smoke. "Well," Nico started, "I guess that leaves just you and me." Shira nodded, following the Anbu. When they finally reached the Hokage's office, the female Anbu knocked on the door. "Enter." A soft voice answered. The phantom shinobi opened the door and looked at the violet-haired woman, bowing his head in a gentlemanly manner. "After you, Anbu Haim," he said in a warm tone. Youkai felt heat rise to her cheeks, not expecting him to flirt with her. The violet-haired Kunoichi thought to herself in amusement, "Thank Kami for this mask. I'm sure that I'm blushing right now." Still, she placed an elegant hand on the ghost nin's mask before letting the hand slide down his chest, walking by as she softly replied, "If you don't mind, then thank you." Shira's eyebrows rose as he felt heat threatening to color his face. He thought to himself, I didn't expect her to say anything back. A smile began to surface on his masked face. I wonder how things would turn out if she knew who I really was. Leaving his musings, the golden-haired man looked at the blonde Hokage and thought, "You haven't changed." I see a sleeping Hokage and one Shizune later, the female fire shadow was awake with a hole in the wall. "Poor guy," Shira whispered. Yugao and Shizune nodded in agreement. A ninja ran in to report his mission to her when she punched him through a wall. "Okay. Nico, you are dismissed," the slug princess said, ready to get this over with. That nap was getting good. "Hi Hokage-sama." Yuga replied, bowing respectfully. She turned to leave before Shira grabbed her hand. Surprised, she turned back to see him get something out of his pocket. "Here," he said, placing a moonflower in her hand. The flower was beautiful as its fragrance was soft, making the Anbu Kunoichi lightly blush from the gift. Silence reigned for a moment before she looked at him and quietly asked, "How long are you here for?" "Maybe few days if Hokage-sama allows it," the wolf-masked shinobi replied in a reserved tone. The CAD operative nodded, heat beginning to color her cheeks. "Should that happen, I would like to meet with you again before you leave." Shira smiled warmly. "Gladly. Maybe we could see each other without our masks. I'll show you my face if you show me yours." Embarrassed, the purple-haired just looked down and lightly blushed. She quickly turned to leave. When she reached the door, Shira said, "See you later, Nico-chan." At this, her blush increased before she closed the door. Tsunade and Shizune gaped at what just happened. This guy just flirted with an Anbu personnel. "Alright, who the hell do you think you are? Do you know her?" Tsunade questioned. The ghost shinobi chuckled. "Yeah. But then again, you all know me too." Shizune asked in apprehension as she subtly readied herself, "Do we?" Shira nodded, grinning under his mask. "You do. I would have just sent you a message, but the information I have is too sensitive for that," he said, taking off his mask. "You know, I'm not allowed to be here." Both the Hokage and her assistant looked at the man's tan skin, golden hair, azure eyes, and 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. "Naruto," they both said in shock. The Jinchuriki gave them a grin. "At your service." Silence reigned in the office of the female Hokage. Tsunade and Shizune looked at Naruto in front of them and took it all in. He had gotten taller, if by them looking up to him was indication. He now had longer golden locks of hair with the sides jetting down like the Yondaime. His smile showed the 2 women that his canines had gotten a bit longer. They looked at his eyes and saw that it had become a deep blue which to them was more fitting for him. Naruto looked at the dazed faces of the 2 women and felt a bit embarrassed. He didn't change that much, did he? He waved a gloved hand at the Hokage and her apprentice, trying to snap them out of it. "Are the both of you Al Ragoof?" Naruto was cut off by the 2 mednins because of a hug. A very air-constricting hug. Shizune, seeing the swordsman turn blue, quickly let go of him. The other wasn't so apt about releasing the QB container. "Tsunade-sama." At that rate he'll pass. Naruto's body went limp and now had swirls for eyes. "Out." The blonde-haired woman blinked as she looked at her apprentice for a moment, her mind registering what she had said. Tsunade immediately held Naruto away from her. "Oops," the blonde woman whispered. Shizune just shook her head and smiled. Naruto groaned and felt a bit lightheaded. "What happened?" he asked, holding his head as he winced. Shizune gave a sheepish smile. "Well, you were almost snuffed out by a death hug," the medical apprentice quipped. Naruto got off the couch in the office and turned to his left and saw the 2 women blushing in embarrassment and shame. Naruto allowed a smile to grace his features as he spoke, "It's alright. I'm happy to see you both, too." The medic ninja smiled. "So what was your reason for coming here?" Swand asked, getting down to business. Naruto pulled 2 scrolls from his cloak and gave it to the Hokage. "First, I wanted to get the bounty of the Akatsuki members, Hariken and Kakuzu." Both women felt their eyes widen in surprise. "You defeated them?" Shizune asked, shock on her countenance. The blonde-haired man nodded, confirming her question. "Asuma and his team were having a bit of trouble with them, and I happened to be in the area. Hariken and Kakuzu were going to die by me anyway," Naruto said solemnly. Tsunade looked at him, perplexed. "Why? I know they were after you since you are a Jinchuriki, but what did they do to make it so personal?" Naruto stayed quiet for a minute before he gazed at her, his eyes taking a piercing quality. They tried to capture the Jinchuriki Ujido Nai, endangering the mist-hidden village in the meanwhile. At this, both of the women were shocked. Tsunade became serious as she replied, "Hold on, that happened 6 months ago. There was an army with those two leading it. Report said that they were all destroyed by a single man." Naruto pulled up his hand and showed them his mask, realization beginning to show on their feminine visages. Naruto's expression became quiet as he spoke, "I didn't really have much choice in the matter. I couldn't let the Akatsuki have her." Killer Bee showed up and tried to rescue his teammate, but apparently he had fought Itachi and Kisame beforehand. "I took it from there and before I knew it, Hariken and Kakuzu had escaped." Silence reigned as the swordsman reached into his cloak, pulling out a scroll as he finished. On a good note, the new Mizukage asked for an alliance with Konoha. The buxom woman looked at the whiskered shinobi, genuinely confused. "We didn't help her village with that." The Yurei gave a sheepish grin, scratching the back of his head. "Well, originally she wanted me to join her ranks. I declined and asked if she could look for an alliance with Konoha," he said, grinning warmly. Tsunade looked at the shinobi before her gaze softening. "It's not that I don't appreciate what you've done, having another ally is great, but why?" Her eyes bore into his, searching for the answer. The ghost shinobi understood that the question was deeper than the first glance. The Jinchuriki gave a resolute smile. "The bonds that I share with these people mean that much to me. If I have to help Konoha to keep them safe, then I will." Naruto stopped for a moment for the information to be processed by the two mednins before he continued. "I know I can't be accepted by Konoha, but I can help you from the shadows. So please, accept it." His azure eyes quietly stared at the Hokage, reaching into his cloak as he pulled out a scroll with the Mizukage seal on it. Tsunade remained silent as she looked at the shinobi before her. She finally reached to a decision, extending her hand as she took the scroll. The last Senju regarded the QB container with a soft gaze, neither of the two saying a word. Shizune quietly asked, "So you said you met the new Mizukage, right? What are they like?" The apprentice hoped to steer the conversation away to something else, not just for her sake, but for the two of them as well. Naruto blinked at the raven-haired woman before giving a small grin, his whiskered cheeks lightly colored. "She's different. She's strong, not just in her shinobi skills, but in her character too. She isn't quick to fight, rather will try to compromise before going to that point. She'll do what it takes to protect the Mist Village." A genuine smile graced the Jinchuriki's facial features. "She's someone you like, Tsunade-chan." The Hokage smiled warmly, taking note of the suffix that the ghost shinobi addressed her in. Naruto briefly looked out of the window and reminisced as he finished, "Mei is definitely one of a kind." Flashback. Ujido, Kurabi, and Shira walked towards the Mizukage's office. After defeating Hariken and Kakuzu, the Mist leader wanted to personally thank them. Well, just him actually, the other two just wanted to come. "Hell yeah. You went to work and put them in the hurt. I thought me and my bro were a demolition, but you're just an inspiration." The Kumo ninja rapped his statement animatedly. Ujido shook her head, grimacing from the rapping shinobi's attempts of rhyming words, even if she did agree. "Well, thanks again for your help. We were definitely too worn out to fight all of them." Kurabi nodded as he replied, "If it would have came down to it, we would have went out fighting. We can't let them have the tailed beasts, we would have been better off dying. I don't know what they have planned, but I know for sure that it'll affect the elemental nations as a whole, man. Thanks, you're alright in my book. I'm sure we'll be friends, you're off the hook." The Eight-Tails container put out his fist, waiting for the ghost shinobi to acknowledge it. The masked shinobi gave an unseen smile as he pounded his fist with the rhyming shinobi, giving him a brotherly bond with the Jinchuriki. "Don't worry about it. I had been tracking them down for some time now. I know they have been trying to capture the Jinchuriki for their tailed beasts, but I don't know what for." The phantom ninja's tone of voice became reserved, "Besides, Jinchuriki are only containers. Not the beasts themselves." The two Kumo shinobi's respect for the swordsman had increased a good margin, understanding the difference between the host and beast. Still, the Nekomata container thought about how he stated his last comment. As if it was from experience. Was he one too? The Eight-Tails host was on the same train of thought, glancing at the blonde-haired woman. She returned the gesture, both on the same page. The two Cloud Ninja were about to ask him if he was a Jinchuriki before the ghost shinobi interrupted, "We're here." The guards that escorted the group knocked on the door. A soft feminine voice said, "Enter." Then one guard opened the door and went in first, followed by the group, and last the other guard. The Mizukage had beautiful red hair trailing down to her calves, styled as they flared down the whole length. Her bangs covered her right eye and curved a bit to the left, two more locks laying past her collarbone. Her eye shined a vibrant green, filled with warmth and a well-hidden cunning within its depths. She wore a blue battle kimono with a fishnet shirt, lining the kimono. She had a belt around her waist, showing her hourglass figure. At the end of the belt, the slits of her kimono began also showing her shorts and fishnets that went to the end of her thighs. Naruto couldn't help himself as he thought, beautiful. Thank you Ao and Chijuro. You may leave now. She said, her focus on the masked shinobi before her. Ao stepped closer to her as he replied, are you sure Mizukage-sama? I don't think we can just leave you here with these strangers like this. Why, back in my day. As the bodyguard went on his rant, the red-haired woman's eyes were shadowed. She walked up to the man with the eye patch and stopped, his gaze confused. A sickly sweet smile graced her features as she said, shut up or I'll kill you. Ao looked her with anime eyes. What did I do? Pillar B decided to answer his question with a grin. You're probably annoying her with your back in my day speech. I'm surprised you didn't get sent into next week. Everyone in the room sweat-dropped, finding his speech pattern strange. She isn't a Kage for nothing, right? The mist shinobi looked at the ghost user. She looks strong to me. Don't worry about her so much. Ao thought on the masked man's words. I know. I guess I do get a little out of hand sometimes. He sighed quietly and looked at Chijuro. Let's go. The bodyguard wasted no time, leaving the room. The mist swordsman followed, but took another look at the masked swordsman. He could feel the confidence radiating off of his being, unafraid of anything. It was admirable to him, wishing that he had that kind of bravery. He quietly exited the office, his thoughts on the phantom shinobi. The Mizukage was impressed. This man is stronger than he lets on. Not only that, but he stands before me without hesitation. She looked at the swordsman, respect growing for him. The golden-haired shinobi scratched the back of his head, finding the Mizukage's intense stare unnerving. Sorry if I offended you, Mizukage-sama. I didn't mean to. The woman gave a beautiful smile, amused from the apology. You have nothing to be sorry for. She replied softly. The mist leader looked at the trio. If anything, I should be thanking you for helping him understand. Ujido, sensing that the Mizukage wanted to be alone with the Yurei, grabbed Karabi by his scarf and said, we'll wait outside. The rapping ninja shrugged and grabbed the swordsman by the shoulder. This girl is fine, don't mess up with this dime. He whispered for only him to hear. The wolf-masked man blushed and lowered his head a little. The tanned Cloud Nin laughed and walked outside with his fellow Cloud Shinobi, giving them their privacy. The fiery-haired woman looked at the blonde-haired man, a bemused smile gracing her features. So you are the infamous Shira Yurei. She said, her smile growing. The ghost shinobi grinned as he scratched his head sheepishly. I'm just a regular shinobi, Mizukage-sama. The delicate eyebrow rose as she replied, oh, strong and modest. It's hard to come across men like this nowadays. You are quite different than what I imagined you to be like. A small melodious laugh escaped her lips. Shira smiled to himself, enjoying the sound of her voice. She sighed and continued. We of the village really appreciate you stopping that Akatsuki army. Here. She presented him a scroll. Consider it as a thanks from the mist. I still have to give you the bounty of the missing mins. Shira accepted the scroll and said, thanks. As for the bounty, keep it. Just mark them off from the bingo book. She looked at him in surprise. What about your village? They may need it. The Yurei's hand flinched for a quick moment, but she caught it. Shira didn't say anything. Were you banished? The village leader asked with concern. Shira looked out her office window, lightly laughing from her being perceptive. Unfortunately, it was for something out of my control. He quietly answered. The red-haired woman felt sympathetic to the ninja before her. He seemed like a good person. Well, would you like to stay here? Your skills would be valued and you would have a new home. She offered with a little hope in her eyes. The Yurei thought for a moment before he answered, I would love to stay here, but I can't. She looked at him with a gentle gaze. I understand. If there is anything I could do for you. The spirit user paused for a moment, an idea coming to him. Well, could you please ask for an alliance with Konoha? I know it's a lot. Done. The Mizukage interrupted with a smile. The swordsman looked at her in surprise. I've been considering it for a while now, and it would be beneficial for both hidden villages. The Mizukage then went into her desk and pulled out a scroll for the Hokage to read. Here. Whenever you get a chance, give it to Hokage-sama. Shira bowed in gratitude. Thank you, Mizukage-sama. The red-haired woman smiled softly. It's May. Terumi May. She said, genuinely. Shining beauty. You're truly your namesake. Naruto said with a soft, unseen smile. The mist leader blushed rosily from the compliment. Thank you. I don't mind if you call me by my name. She offered in a sensual manner. The golden-haired ninja blushed, but kept his composure. Doing so would show disrespect to you. She smiled gingerly before she said you have earned more than enough respect from me. You are banished from a village, and yet you continue to try to help them. That's a man of character to me if I were to judge, Yurei-kun. The masked man was taken aback. Yurei-kun. he thought to himself, finding that he couldn't stop a grin that appeared on his face. Feeling a little inquisitive, May moved from behind his desk and sat on top of it. What's with the mask? Thinking about a certain violet-haired Anbu, the shinobi swordsman answered, it was a parting gift. May felt her curiosity peak, wondering what the ghost shinobi looked like. She got off her desk and began to walk towards the swordsman slowly, an enticing expression on her beautiful visage. Shira, feeling nervous, began to backtrack. What are you doing? She didn't answer, focused on what lied beyond the blonde's mask. He continued to back up as she walked forward until his back was against the wall. She swiftly moved in, trapping him. A delicate hand was placed on his chest, allowing her to feel the defined pectoral. She used her other hand and slid it on his mask in an intimate manner, taking it off smoothly. What she saw made her face flush rosily. The Mizukage took in an angular face devoid of any baby fat framed by his golden hair and whiskered marked cheeks. She looked into his piercing azure eyes and said, such a handsome face. Why would you want to hide this? I like it. He couldn't stop the heat that emitted itself upon his face. Both shinobi stared into each other's eyes, both becoming lost in one another. May began to feel something stir within her heart as the Jinchuriki's eyes spoke volume to her. I'm not sure why he has those same eyes as I did during the bloodline purges, and yet, they're different. There is a strength, a fire that he has. I hardly know this man, and yet. Her green eyes became half-lidded as she and the blonde had began inching their faces closer together. As they moved close together, the blonde shinobi felt the mist shadow's leg move on his. Naruto felt his body respond with his hands on her slim waist. Their lips gently touched, the kiss stirring something within them. Both melted into the embrace, the intimate gesture becoming more passionate. May gave an airy moan as their tongues brushed along with each other tenderly. Finally, she and the phantom shinobi slowly separated. The mist shadow retreated back, a rosy blush on her feminine visage. Naruto gazed at her, a small grin on his face, as his cheeks took a red tinge to them. May held her face with a hand, her rosy blush apparent. I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. Naruto wasn't faring any better, bowing his head. Don't be. The Mizukage looked to see him grinning warmly to her. It was infectious, a grin appearing on her face as she thought to herself, he seems different from the rest. Not to mention that he can make a woman feel so wanted. He threatened to color her cheeks once more, able to stop it. The ghost shinobi looked at the russet-haired Kunoichi before him. Well, as much as I would like to stay with you, I have to leave. I need to escort those two back. May became a bit downhearted, wanting to learn more of the shinobi. She quietly sighed to herself. Before you go, are you a Jinchuriki too? He nodded, answering her question. Which one? He looked at her and chuckled. You know that sensitive information, May. She pouted at him. He lifted 9 fingers on his hands. Her eyes widened in shock, not expecting to meet with the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. The Yurei began to walk away before she asked, what's your name? He stopped walking, turning around as he gave a fox-like jin to her. Uzumaki Naruto. Remember it. The Mizukage found a warm smile gracing her features before he finally exited, closing the door. Naruto looked over to his left to see Kurabi grinning like an idiot and Yujito blinking as she stared at him. Both Kumonin saw his whiskered cheeks and looked at him questioningly, noting that Yujito was sporting a small blush on her face. Did you ever get the feeling that you felt naked without being naked? He asked. Then it hit him like a ton of bricks. His mask. May still had it. And now he had to explain the marks on his face. Damn it. And after getting his mask back, he explained to the Kumo shinobi a bit about himself. Flashback end. Naruto shook his head from the memory, feeling a few chakra signatures heading their way. Tsunade-sama. Kurenai, along with Hinata, ran into the office. Is Asuma here? I saw Izumo and Katetsu, but I didn't see him and Shikamaru. Tsunade looked back at Naruto to see the mask back on his face. Fast, I didn't even see him put his mask back on. She looked at the ghost shinobi. Well, you were with the team during the altercation. Did Asuma sustain any major injuries? The golden-haired ninja nodded. He had taken a blow on his left leg and on his right side. It wasn't too bad, but it did need medical attention to heal properly. Kurenai looked at the swordsman in surprise, lightly bowing. Thank you and I apologize. The masked shinobi raised a hand as he interrupted. No need. I was just leaving anyway. The blonde-haired man stood up, reaching into his cloak again as he pulled out another scroll. Here. Don't open it until I leave. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. He instructed to the Hokage. The slug princess nodded and took the scroll that was being given to her. Hinata looked at the masked man, feeling familiarity with the phantom ninja. I think I know him. But from where? Then she concentrated on his mask and his sword. He seems familiar. Hinata was so focused on him, she didn't notice him walk to her until he waved his hand in front of her face. Excuse me? Are you alright? The Hyuga blushed and began to sputter apologies. It's alright, Hinata. I know I look weird with my mask anyway. Goraikou and Hinata looked at the cloaked man in suspicion. Oh no, I never told you my name. Naruto cursed in his head for his slip-up, but he never lost his wits about himself. You and your family techniques are famed in the shinobi world. He started. I'm disappointing that they never mentioned how beautiful you are, though. He ended in sincerity. He knew about her feelings for him when they were younger and he always thought she was cute. But because of his background, he couldn't give it a chance. Well, he was here, he was going to try to make it up to her. Hinata blushed prettily from the man's compliment. Now if only she could see his face. Goraikou on the other hand, had mixed feelings. On one side, she was shocked that the man had the audacity to say that to her student. On the other side, she wished Asuma would say something that romantic to her. You're frowning. The Yurei said. Huh? Goraikou said, startled from her thoughts. I said, you're frowning. The Jinjutsu mistress looked at him questioningly. Well, you were frowning, you missed the dirt on your shirt. He pointed at her shirt. She looked down at her shirt only to see the man's finger come up quickly and run up her face. Gotcha. He said with a playful grin, laughing. Hinata giggled, finding the shocked expression on her face funny. The two medical kunoichi could only laugh, partially shocked that Naruto had the audacity to do that to the Genjutsu mistress. Goraikou was embarrassed before she lightened up, allowing a smile to grace her features. After a few moments to get themselves together, the swordsman looked at the raven-haired woman. Your smile is amazing. Goraikou flushed at the compliment. Tsunade garnered the Jinchuriki's attention once more. The bounties will be processed in 3 days. Until then, feel free to stay in the village. The golden-haired shinobi nodded. Thanks. I better be on my way. He turned to leave until a delicate hand stopped him. Let us show you around Konoha. Hinata said, surprising everyone. In her head, the Hyuga thought, I want to learn more about him. I don't know why, but he reminds me of Naruto-kun. The Yurei chuckled. How can I say no? Goraikou smiled lightly before she asked, can we go to the hospital first? I want to see if Asuma-kun is okay. The masked man nodded, a mischievous gleam in his eyes. As long as you don't frown again, the woman flushed and everyone snickered at her misfortune. Well, the ghost shinobi opened the door, moving to the side. Lead the way. And with that, the trio left the office and into the village. This visit sure is turning out different than what I expected, Naruto thought, unsure what to make of it. He figured he would go in, stay here for a few days, and stay in the shadows to see his friends, and leave with his bounty money in hand. But here he is, being taken around Konoha by two beautiful kunoichi. Nothing ever goes to plan when it comes at him, did it? Yurei-san, how did you meet up with Asuma's team? Asked Goraikou, curious as to how they met. The ghost shinobi chuckled. Please, no need to be so formal. As to how I met up with Asuma's team, I was just at the right place, at the right time. Hinata looked at the shinobi's mask again. So where are you from? Naruto looked her way, giving the kunoichi the feeling that he was grinning. Well, when a man and a woman have strong feelings for each other. Hinata and Goraikou blushed before they threw a punch at him. He caught both of their fists with unconsciously and chuckled. It's fun messing with you. Both women flushed and looked away from him. And that's how to avoid a question that doesn't need to be answered. The Yurei thought solemnly to himself. The masked swordsman, the Ice Queen, and the Hyuga princess were being watched by the people of Konoha with mixed feelings. On the men's side, they were basically asking who he was and or what is so great about him that he was graced to walk and talk with the two beautiful shinobi. On the women's side, they were wondering what was behind his mask. The group consisting of 5 people, 3 guys and 2 women, walked up to the trio. The leader was a burly man that wore a gray vest with no shirt underneath, showing various scars. He wore white-fitting pants and gray sandals to complete his attire. The left wingman wore no shirt and had navy pants with Jetta sandals on. The woman on his right had green eyes, wore black cargo pants with green lines on them, and a black jounin vest with a green shirt underneath, giving her a sense on style. The leader's right wingman had on a purple muscle shirt and black shorts with an eye patch. Last, the woman on the left wore a yellow shirt that stopped at the belly button and a white skirt with black biker shorts underneath. Well, would you look at that? The leader sneered. 2 lovely ladies with a loser. Have you even seen his face? He could be ugly for all we know. Why take a chance on that when you can have a guarantee on this? He finished with a lecherous smile. The ghost shinobi shook his head, sighing to himself before he said, let's just keep moving. We don't want any problems. The trio walked past them. The woman on the left wingman's side smiled a bit. She looked at the leader to see an angry man. She looked at the rest of the group to see them riled up also. She shook her head. Now normally, she would be the voice of reason, but this time, she decided to watch the fireworks. Hey! The leader yelled. No one dismisses me. Do you know who I am? The swordsman stopped. He turned and retorted flatly, do I care? You did have a point about my mask, but it's not even like that. They were just showing me around Konoha, that's all. The leader's right wingman said, we don't care if they were showing you around hell. When we want something, we get it. The swordsman questioned, and what do you want? At this, the leader's left wingman said, how about the mask? The phantom ninja lightly chuckled. This was a gift. The woman on the left wingman's side said, what do you have to hide? Oh wait, I know. The person that gave you that mask wanted you to stop shaming and embarrassing yourself. The group laughed at her jibe. The woman in the Jounin vest looked sadly at the masked man before leaving the group to go take a seat. Where are you going, Mika? The leader asked. Away from you and your friends. You always do this dumb stuff. She found a spot to sit at near a weapons shop. At this, the leader grew mad and then calmed himself. Whatever. She'll be back. Now, let's see what's behind that mask. The leader moved with Jounin speed to the Yurei. To the leader's group, Mika, and the two Kunoichi with the golden-haired man, he was fast. But to the Yurei. It was all in slow motion. Shira grabbed his hand roughly and began to apply pressure. Let me go. The burly man shouted, struggling to get his hand free. The swordsman stood there passively. The last person who touched my mask died. So essentially, I just saved your life. The crimson-cloaked man let go of his hand. Next time, I won't save you. The man nodded slowly and the man and his crew left swiftly. Mika, Kurenai, and Hinata were shocked by the shinobi's reaction. That mask means a lot to you, doesn't it? The green-eyed Jounin asked. The ninja swordsman nodded. Yeah. So how did you get mixed up with them? Shira asked, curious of the Kunoichi. The obsidian-haired woman smiled lightly. We were childhood friends. I don't know what made them change that way. The woman said, downtrodden. Still, that doesn't make it right. I'm sorry for the trouble they've caused. She bowed her head in shame. The Genjutsu mistress and Hyuga princess walked to the black and green-clad girl and tried to comfort her. Naruto on the other hand was thinking towards his tenants, unsure of what to do. What can I do here? Ayubi looked at the scene before her container. You could leave her there and go about your business. Naruto frowned from the suggestion. Kyubi. The guardian grinned as she moved to placate her container. It was a thought. But you could maybe join them in their hug to help her. The sigh was heard as the sun goddess made herself known. Why don't you try doing something to take her mind off of it? Perhaps taking her with you and going around Konoha. The Jinchuriki thought about for a moment before he nodded, thanking the heavens that Amaterasu was with him. Naruto made a suggestion. How about you come with us to cool down? After we go to the hospital to see Asuma-san, we're walking around Konoha. Mika looked at him with her forest green eyes and replied, alright. The Yurei nodded and stretched. Well okay then. I suppose introductions are in order then. He stopped and looked at the red-eyed woman expectantly. What? The Genjutsu mistress asked, confused from his gaze. Well, you're the sensei. You should be the example, right? Kami, you're slacking, the blonde swordsman replied flatly, grinning from the raven-haired woman's flushing face. Whatever, you could have done it. You are probably older than me, anyway. The crimson-eyed woman retorted. The ghost shinobi chuckled. I'm 17. She looked at him, her expression saying that she didn't believe him. Okay. I'm 18. Now, all three of the women looked at the man in disbelief. What? My birthday just passed. Is it bad that I forgot? The Yurei asked, sheepishly scratching the back of his head. Hinata saw the gesture, reminding her of Naruto as a small pang of sadness hit her. Kurenai spoke in surprise, I thought you were in your 20s. You seem more mature than I thought. Hinata blinked and smiled coyly. So you were checking him out. You sure are the perfect example, Kurenai-sensei. The red-eyed woman blushed before shooting back, and you weren't. Going around the village was your idea in the first place. The Byakugan heiress's cheeks began to take on a red tinge. The Hyuga may have been embarrassed, but she kept her mind sharp as a response came into mind. Well, it was my idea, you never denied coming with us. I know I wasn't the only one curious about him. Kurenai blushed lightly, knowing what her student had said was true. The ghostly shinobi blushed lightly as he cleared his throat to get the two arguing Kunoichi's attention. Are you ready to go to the hospital now? It's only a few blocks away. Both women stopped their argument, finally focusing at the task at hand. Kurenai's eyes began to shimmer in worry as she said, yeah. Let's go. The Genjutsu shinobi jumped to the rooftops with her pupil following suit. Naruto watched them for a moment as he looked at Mika with him. We better not get left behind. The swordsman said to the Jounin woman. She nodded and they both jumped ahead to catch up with the master and student. Tsunade stared at the scroll Naruto had given her before he left. It was a full rundown on Orochimaru's and the Akatsuki's movements, layouts, and history. So, Naruto was the one who wiped out most of the Sound Village and damaged Orochimaru into such a critical state, as well as killing off Kabuto. To be so powerful in such a short amount of time, she stated to herself. The blonde woman looked at the bottom left corner of the scroll to see a chakra seal. Well, what could this be? The slug princess wondered aloud before placing her index finger on the seal and added chakra. The seal glowed and another scroll and a box came into existence in a small plume of smoke. She opened the scroll and it read. Hey Tsunade-chan, I just wanted to give you a souvenir. Enjoy. Shirayure. She opened the box and grinned, thanking the heavens. The box contained the best sake in the world, 3 extra large bottles. Yes, today was a glorious day. I will savor these. Tsunade whispered to herself in elation as she opened the bottle. She took 5 good gulps before putting the bottle down and savored the wonderful flavors of the wondrous beverage. Now that's sake. The Hokage said in total bliss before she fell unconscious on her desk. Yeah. Best day ever. Too bad she didn't read the bottle that she drank to know that the liquid was mixture to bring back a person's youth. And she drank half of it. The 4 ninjas finally made it to their destination as they were few yards in front of the hospital. I was starting to wonder if we would ever get here. Shira said, looking at his surroundings for a brief moment before his eyes landed on the Genjutsu expert. So Yuuhi-san, just how young are you, if you don't mind me asking? Kurenai looked at him and allowed a small smile to grace her features. Kurenai. Just Kurenai. And I'm 24. She said softly with her cheeks taking a lovely pink tinge. Nah? Really? The swordsman asked, his tone a playful one. I had no idea by looking at demeanor, I would have guessed 22. He said slyly. Hinata and Mika giggled and Kurenai pouted a little bit with her cheeks gaining more color. Stop messing with me, she whispered to the Yurei. Only because you asked, Kurenai-chan. He said warmly, which made the woman feel the heat threatened to color more of her face. Well, let's go see how Asuma-san is holding up. He said calmly, pushing aside his joking manner. Kurenai looked a little worried and Hinata and Mika took on a more serious attitude. They all entered the hospital and went to the counter. Excuse me nurse, could you tell us if we could visit Sarutobi Asuma? The nurse looked at the group and looked down at her clipboard. Let's see, yes, he is healthy enough to be visited. Room 706 on the 6th floor. The group smiled and the swordsman said, alright, thank you. They entered an elevator along with a doctor and another ninja. The ninja looked at Naruto with his hand by his kunai pouch, feeling intimidated. Hey, we're okay. No need for that. Shira said, feeling his unease. The ninja relaxed his stance, keeping his guard up. The doctor looked at Mika and smiled. So, you come around here often? He asked. Mika looked at the doctor and replied, I don't come here, if I don't have to, sir. She said, hoping that he would catch the hint. The doctor was about to say something else when the swordsman put his arm around the green-eyed woman, causing her to feel his unusual warmth and blush from the contact. Sir, we are going through a tough time right now. The doctor nodded and looked at Kurenai and Hinata with a smile. All of us. Shira ended with his arms around Kurenai and Hinata, also causing them to redden in their cheeks. The doctor's eye twitched, but nodded. A ninja next to the crimson-cloaked man just chuckled at the whole scene. You, sir, are an inspiration. The Konoha said before the elevator doors opened to the 6th floor. The swordsman blushed under his mask but stayed silent and moved out of the elevator with his escorts and new friend. Thank you. Mika said gratefully. That doctor was creepy. Shira gave a thumbs up as he replied, no problem. Truthfully, I thought he was too. The group of 4 began to walk, looking for the room that they needed. 702, 704, and 706. Well, this is the room. The Yurei said. He took a step back and looked a turn to Kurenai. The Jinjutsu mister smiled softly to him and walked to the door. Thank you, Shira-kun. She whispered and opened the door, going inside as everyone else followed. Asuma was lying down on the edge of the bed, trying to reach his cancer sticks that seemed just beyond his reach. Stupid Anko and her sick sense of humor. They say we're not allowed to smoke in here, but damn the consequences. I need a light. The trench knife user whispered with pure hatred. Naruto looked at the scene with his mask and only thought, prank time, hey, he may be more mature, but old habits die hard. In Naruto's case, that habit will go with him to his grave. Using wind manipulation, he slowly pushed the nicotine pack towards the near hyperventilating ninja. Yes. Come, my love. You want me as much as I want you. I know it. Asuma whispered happily. The trio of women looked at him in silence as if he was a madman. Shira looked at them and snickered silently. Just reach a little more, my dancing monkey, the golden-haired man thought. Ayubi grinned as she watched her container. That's right, I've finally corrupted you, Naruto-kun. You know I will not disappoint. The disguised Jinchuriki chirped happily. You know better, Naruto-kun. You shouldn't do that to him. Amaterasu said inside his mind. Old habits die hard, Rasu-chan. I can't seem to shake the addiction. The phantom shinobi shot back with a grin, causing the sun goddess to shake her head as a smile began its way to her face. The trench knife user was so close to touching the cigarette pack, but he was in a lot of pain. But they are worth it. The Jounin thought and doubled his efforts. The pack moved a little more towards Asuma's hand and touched his fingers. Finally. The nicotine-deprived man said and pushed to grab them. Just as his hand was about to touch the pack, the little box of nicotine sticks moved back suddenly, making the Saratobi's eyes widen in shock as he missed the swipe and fell to the floor simultaneously. The women couldn't stifle their laughter any longer, and all of the women burst into laughing their heart's content. Asuma was startled by the laughing and looked up to see the group. "Please don't tell anyone you saw that." He spoke, embarrassed. The group laughed even harder, making the bearded man sigh in defeat. "My apologies, Asuma-san. I couldn't resist." Asuma was helped up by Kurenai and laid back down in the bed. "Shira-san. What do you mean?" Asuma inquired, not understanding the apology. The ghost shinobi scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "Well, I was moving your pack of cigarettes." Everyone looked at him in shock. "I thought that I was just seeing things," Hinata said, surprised of the ninja swordsman's admittance. Laughter was heard from Mika as she smiled. "Classic." She rose her hand in a high-five manner. Knowing the gesture, Naruto gladly returned it with a resounding clap. The Jinchuriki paused for a moment before he gazed at the green-eyed woman incredulously, while everyone else looked on with anime eyes. Mika realized what she did and looked at everyone else shyly with her cheeks becoming colored. "What?" she asked cutely. "I like a good prank." "I never suspected that from her," the nine-tailed guardian said, blinking in her bewildered state. Her host nodded in agreement. "None of us did, Kyubi," Naruto replied, getting over his surprise. "Rasu-chan." No response. "Rasu-chan." The swordsman called out in his mind. He didn't get an answer. "I don't know where she went, Naruto-kun," the foxy woman said honestly. This baffled the Jinchuriki. Where could she have gone? Naruto wondered, his mind drawing a blank. The swordsman felt a tug on his gloved hand and looked down to see a white wolf. Both Naruto and Kyubi had anime eyes, freezing in their places. For Naruto, it took much self-restraint to scream unto the heavens. "What the hell, Ami? Why are you out there?" Kyubi yelled. Amaterasu looked at Naruto and gave a smirk. "Why, to play with Naruto-kun's emotions of course. I guess your corruption of pranks affects anyone around," the holy wolf said casually and stunned the red-haired guardian. "Nah, you have an albino dog sitting next to you, Yurei-san," Mika pointed out. Amaterasu's left eye twitched, annoyed that she had been called an albino dog. Shira and Kyubi chuckled, knowing that the holy wolf hated when she was called a dog. "It's beautiful. Is it yours?" Hinata asked with a smile. Kurenai looked at the Hyuga heiress. "So Kiba passed that dog love to you, huh?" the red-eyed woman asked. Hinata shook her head as a negative. "No, I've always had a soft spot for animals. Well, I like Akamaru, hanging out with Kiba has been a little difficult. Ever since his hormones kicked in, he has been quite perverted." The golden-haired shinobi laughed a little, shrugging his shoulders. "That's life, I suppose." The canine waved a paw at the Hyuga, surprising the people in the room. "She says thank you for the compliment. Her name is Amaterasu." The ghost ninja gave an unseen smile behind his mask as he looked at the white-furred animal. "But I call her Rasu-chan for short." Shira finished as he knelt down and scratched the wolf behind her ear. That's the spot, Naruto-kun," the wolf moaned inside his head while her tail wagged happily. The swordsman smiled warmly, continuing his ministrations on her head. QB just giggled at the sun goddess's antics. "So you all came to see me?" The nicotine addict masked ninja nodded, giving the impression that he was smiling. "Some more than others," Asuma-san, the swordsman answered and turned to Kurenai. She blushed before she moved her gaze to the chain smoker. Kurenai-chan. Asuma trailed off, kissing her on her cheek before they embraced each other. Naruto looked at the scene with a small ache in his heart. He had seen this play out with so many others. He would end up saving a beautiful woman's lover and he would be forgotten or not thanked. Hell, a couple of the guys showed off in front of him, kissing the woman and then look at him, possessive of their significant other. He did his best to not to be envious, he really did. "You're lucky," Asuma Naruto thought as he turned to leave to give the couple some space. "Wait, Shirakun," Kurenai said. The Yurei stopped and looked back. "It's alright. I'll go look for a hotel to stay at. Maybe we will meet another time." The swordsman looked at everyone. "Thanks for showing me around and keeping me company. It was nice." He turned around and began to walk with the wolf following his lead. "Yurei-kun," Mika whispered in concern. Something was different about him. Hinata moved to try and stop him from leaving before the golden-haired man showed them how he earned his name. The phantom shinobi became white and transparent before fading away and disappearing, stunning everyone. "Beautiful," Hinata whispered. She turned on her Byakugan when he used his ghost technique and saw the movement of his chakra's circulatory system. It became pure white and flowed like the wind before disappearing. So beautiful, but he is hurting inside. Everyone felt the true emotion in his voice, even when he tried to cover it with a warm tone. He was lonely. Naruto became tangible at a nearby alley before he started walking to find a field or a training ground to get his mind off of things. So Rasu-chan, are you going to come back in the seal? I hear Kyuubi snoring and it's pretty loud. Naruto stated. Yeah, in a flash, the holy being changed into her human form and embraced the Jinchuriki. Naruto gazed at the snow-haired woman, surprised. Kyuubi and I will be here for you, Naruto-kun. Amaterasu said softly and went inside his seal. Naruto gave a small smile beneath his mask and continued to walk. 10 minutes later, he found an uninhabited training ground. Finally. He said. He took the sword off of his back and began to do the katas, combining them into one deadly dance. Doing this always puts him at peace and takes his thoughts away from the world and into the wind. Suddenly, 2 fireballs were heading his way and the swordsman blocked at the same pace as he was doing with his katas, slicing the fireballs and the hidden shurikens in multiple pieces. Naruto finished the last of his katas and stopped, his back toward the unwanted guests. So you and your team are back for more? The crimson-cloaked man asked, becoming serious. 4 shinobi jumped into the clearing. They wore cloaks that had red clouds with hoods. Sasuke, Karen, Juugo, and Suigetsu looked at the Yurei in anger. I will show you that the first time was a fluke. Sasuke said. We are going to kill you, here and now. Juugo said with his curse seal activating. You don't seem to listen very well. The golden-haired shinobi turned to face them. I told you to leave me alone, time after time. You will not receive any mercy from me this time. The Yurei got into his sword stance and disappeared. Sasuke blocked most of the Phantom Ninja's attacks, but the ones that landed hit near crucial spots. I couldn't keep up with some of the attacks. The young Uchiha thought to himself in surprise. The Sharingan user looked back at his team who were in alright condition. They were alive, with a few deep cuts here and there. Sasuke focused at the golden-haired man in a serious manner. No matter. Sasuke said and readied Kusanagi with new determination. Understand me clearly when I tell you this, Shira said. Team Taka focused on the swordsman and also got into their stances, feeling the killer intent that he radiated. If you believe that you saw a ghost, he vanished and reappeared behind them in the same stance, making their eyes widen in shock. Then you did. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.